Pre-recorded from Casa de Regis in Culver City, California, it's the Reggie N Regis Podcast!
And welcome to episode 9 of the Reggie N Regis Podcast. I am your host, Reggie Bobrin. To my left is my compadre, Regis.
Yes, Regis, mononymic, one name, like Madonna or Cher, but younger and way less talented.
And for today's podcast, we're going to just break down the NFL schedule, which came out Thursday. We're going to break down a few of the big primetime matchups, give a few predictions on some surprise teams, teams that won't live up to expectations, a few of the big matchups, and break down some of the free agencies, kind of right now, some of the signings and whatnot.
Yeah, this is literally the only thing that's going on in the sports world right now, unless you count the UFC 249 that's going on tonight and then NASCAR coming back next week. But before we get into any of that, obviously, we want to express our best wishes to our audience out there. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying sane. I know things are weird right now on multiple fronts, and, us coming up with content for the show has been kind of a challenge. So, again, if you have any ideas, feel free to email us at ReggieNRegisPodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, we're going to go into the NFL season, and we're going to take kind of a freezing cold takes approach as to what we think this season could be. Obviously, our predictions are going to be predicated on things going off as scheduled. That could obviously change between now and September. But what we're going to do is we're going to break down the NFL season as we think it might play out based on the rosters that we know right now, and kind of see what things look like in May of 2020, knowing that in 6 months we could sound like complete idiots.
Well, hopefully not. This is kind of like the first time like an NFL schedule has dominated, the sports landscape for like more than an hour or two. Like obviously the world that we're living in right now. So obviously a lot of people were kind of very interested to see what the schedule would look like. And one of the things that jumped out from me was the amount of the certain teams that got some primetime games. It was to be expected that Tampa Bay was going to get a few primetime games. I don't think they had any last season, did they? Am I wrong on that?
I think might have had a Thursday nighter.
Okay, so those really sometimes don't count, as we've seen. Titans versus Jacksonville always seems like it's the game of the week for the Thursday night one. But Tampa Bay got 5. Let's see. Let's just kind of go down the list. The 49ers got 5. The Kansas City got 5. The Saints got 5. Teams kind of expected. I think going into the announcement, I should say, I expected Tampa to beat that. I didn't know if they'd get 5, but I guess it was to be expected.
Yeah, there are certain teams and players that are going to get a lot of attention by the major networks. Like, of course, Tampa Bay with having Brady and Gronk, Kansas City with having Mahomes, the Ravens, the year they had last year with Lamar Jackson being MVP. Dallas has 6 games.
Dallas has 6 games, yes.
Yeah, we obviously expected that, and they're going to be in some shootouts this year with, and we'll get into some other reasoning behind that later. But Dak having to prove himself and having 3 good receivers now with Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb. Dallas got 6 games, not just because of the name value and how big of a fan base they have, but those are going to be some entertaining football games. But there are some teams that actually were kind of surprising in the number of primetime games they got.
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought the Raiders having 4 was kind of a bit of a surprise. Getting back to Dallas, obviously, look, 6 games is not a big surprise, being that they bring in the most revenue of any team. I mean, let's just be honest about that.
And as much as I hate to say it, Jerry Jones might be the single best marketer in American business right now. Not just sports business, but in American business.
Yeah.
That guy knows how to sell his team.
Pretty much. But let's just kind of start to break down some of these matchups, Reg. Let's get the elephant out of the room. That week 3 matchup, Kansas City versus the Ravens.
Oh, my God. That is okay, so I pulled up an article before we started recording this podcast ranking the primetime matchups from 1 to, I'm counting the number here, to about 51 of the Thursday, Sunday, Monday nationally televised games. And of course, number 1, Chiefs and Ravens, week 3 on September 28th, between the last 2 MVPs, Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, both with good running backs in those backfields. The clear top 2 teams in the AFC. My God, this one's going to be fun.
That's going to be an epic one. Now, a breakdown of that game. It's funny, trying to break down this particular matchup. We're 5 months away from the game, but it's gonna be. You know what? I'm not gonna say it's gonna be reminiscent of that classic game that the Chiefs played with the Rams 2 years ago, but it might be something similar to that. I mean, you have two of the most exciting players in Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, playing. Well, I'm not gonna say they're in their primes right now, but like they're definitely the two standouts, the last two MVPs. We've seen what they can do with Lamar with his running ability. I have a feeling that his passing ability is going to take another level. Mahomes, obviously doing what Patrick Mahomes does. I think the odds makers for that one. I want to see what the line is going to be for that particular matchup.
Well, you also have to remember Mahomes and Lamar Jackson have been helped out by their supporting cast, right? Mahomes has been helped out greatly by having Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Right, and Lamar Jackson, I think a big part of Lamar Jackson's success last year that nobody's really focusing on is Mark Ingram's career resurgence.
Yeah, and then with the addition of your boy, what's his name, Ohio State guy, what's the
Dobbins?
Doggins. He's actually
J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I know. He's actually one of the guys. He's probably the second best running back in my particular opinion.
I think he's going to have a great career. I think too many teams slept on him, and quite frankly, I'm pissed my Browns didn't get him.
But that's obviously the matchup that's going to jump out at many people. Obviously, one of those two teams, in my opinion, is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
I agree. They are going to be 1 and 2 in the AFC. They're going to each win their division. Now, if this had been years past where the top two teams get the byes, they're clearly the two teams that don't have to play in the wild card round. But now, with the new CBA and having 7 teams make the playoffs, one of those is going to have a proverbial Week 18 matchup.
I was surprised to see how, I guess, easy of a schedule the Ravens got compared to the Chiefs, who I mean they have a lot more tougher matchups, and that's to be expected from the defending Super Bowl champions. But that was one that obviously is going to draw a lot of attention. How about this one? Tampa Bay against the Saints. Well, I should say the Saints versus Tampa Bay.
Wait. Which time are you talking about? The
Week 1.
Yeah, Week 1 on Fox, or are we talking Week 7 on Sunday night?
Either one. I mean, it's going to be a fun matchup regardless. I mean, you have, and I'm not going to say Tampa Bay. I mean, that
you just did say Tampa Bay, and I just did too.
I mean, going forward, okay. I think that's the stupidest thing ever. I like Tom Brady a lot more when I didn't know anything about his life and his personality and whatnot. I thought he was a lot cooler back then. Now that I hear him trying to brand Tampa Bay and talking about his junk with Gronk and all this stupid stuff, I'm just like, God, Tom, just play football and shut up.
He went to Michigan. I never liked him.
But that's definitely, both those matchups are going to be very exciting. Obviously, we don't know what the Bucs are going to be. I hate to kind of assume anything. We've seen. You remember the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles when they had all these guys,
they were supposed to be the dream team,
and then they were supposed to go 16-0 and do all
with
these
Kevin
wonderful
Cobb
things.
As their quarterback,
and no, 2000 Michael Vick.
Well, Vick was there too, but yeah,
Vick, you know what I mean. But
that's right. 2000 Cobb went to the Cardinals.
Right. But 2011, they had all this hype and stuff like that, and it was just like they just kind of fell flat. So I don't want to assume, but with Brady at the helm, with his protective blanket and Gronk, and obviously the talent that they have with Godwin and Evans, and Bright as and OJ Howard, I feel like it's gonna come together against the Saints, which like Drew Brees is. He's another ageless wonder. He's another guy with Sean Payton there, and they have Kamara, and they have that stout defense, especially the secondary with Lattimore.
And they have Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders.
Exactly. So, how did I figure Michael Thomas?
Best receiver in the
game. By far, in my opinion. Him or DeAndre Hopkins, actually, I should say. But anyway, that's going to be two fun games to watch. Any others that got to you?
Well, the interesting thing about that is the Buccaneers just drafted Tristan Wirfs to be their presumed left tackle in the future. Right. Kind of be like what Joe Thomas was for the Browns for a number of years. The question is how, especially with the way training camps could look this fall with how different everything is, how well ingrained into that offense will Tristan Wirfs be, and how much time will Tom Brady have to throw? Because the Saints have a good defense too.
Exactly. So we'll see how those two matchups play out, but there's definitely two matchups that's going to draw a lot of attention. Getting back to like the primetime games, the amount of them that was given out, I was surprised the Raiders got 4.
Well, you have to remember.
I shouldn't be, but I Las Vegas and apparently Reliance Stadium is
Allegiant Stadium.
Allegiant Stadium.
Reliance Stadium's Houston.
Gotcha. Yeah, whatever. Okay. But anyway, I know like there's the big hype, and obviously the Raiders always have one of the greater fan bases in all of sports. I mean, they have legions of fans like throughout, not just this state alone.
Yeah, exactly. We do this out here in California where they still they moved away from LA 25 years ago when they were playing in the Coliseum, and they still have tons of fans around here.
And obviously there's a lot of hype going to Vegas, which I'm sure the NFL is loving, just the amount of money.
And the players will love it too because Nevada has no state income tax.
There you go. But I'm interested to see how they are going to do. How about the Bills getting 4?
I'm really excited to see the Buffalo Bills this year. With their running attack, with Josh Allen really emerging as their potential quarterback of the future, and Sean McDermott doing a great job with that defense. I think the Bills win the AFC East this year.
Oh no, I don't doubt that at all. I think I know. I mean that's easy money right there.
Yeah, because let's face it, the Jets, they aren't quite there yet. Sam Darnold has had his health issues. Miami's a year away. I like what they did with the draft and drafting, Tua and people to protect him and everything like that. But they're a year away. And the Patriots, they still got 5 primetime games this year with Jarrett Stidham as their quarterback.
I'll be honest. I have Miami as a dark horse. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to go out on a limb very early. I wouldn't be surprised if they were on the cusp of making the playoffs.
So 8-8.
8-8, 7-9. One of those two. I mean,
I could see that.
I could see that because
I could see that.
Say what you want about Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, they played hard. I mean, even games that they were trying to tank. It's just that mentality that Brian Flores has, implemented into the Dolphin
Brian
culture.
Flores showed himself to be a great young coach last year.
And they're one of those teams that you can, if you're a gambler, and obviously there's always like odds and whatnot. If they put the Dolphins +6, would you take it?
Against who?
Just overall wins and losses.
Oh, no, so wins and losses, 6 wins. Oh, over.
Over, right?
Over, absolutely.
You would take those. Yeah. I would take those odds too. I mean, I
they
feel
went
like
5-11 last year when they were trying to tank.
Exactly, and they're not one of those teams that like not to take a shot at your beloved Browns had a lot of hype and this and that and the other, and then clearly crashed. But they're one of those teams that people still don't expect them to do much. But I just was so impressed with what I saw with them, with what Brian Flores was able to coach these guys. Obviously, they had some good free agent signings.
Yep.
Tua is the future. I could see that team winning 7 games, at best 8 games, and just being on that cusp, being a pest for the more superior teams. I haven't really taken a look at their schedule. I don't really know who they're playing, but know what I mean.
Exactly. With the Dolphins, their plan is 2021, right? Say they win, 6, 7, 8 games. Maybe they have some draft capital to trade up and then get that difference maker that's going to make them the team in the AFC East for the future. Maybe them versus the Bills.
So let's just kind of go by division. So you said you have the Bills winning the AFC East.
Yeah.
I do as well.
And I don't have any other team making the playoffs out of that division.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Because remember, it's 7 teams in each conference now. So the 4 division winners and 3 wild cards, which makes that number 1 spot even more valuable.
All right. So what about the AFC South? I think the Titans, obviously.
Colts. I looked at the Colts schedule. They have a great offensive line with Quentin Nelson now. I think they go 11-5.
11-5.
They have a good tight. They have a good tight end, Jack Doyle.
Right.
They got a good line. That Marlon Mack is going to be back. T.Y. Hilton's still a number 1 threat.
I think the way the Titans are constructed right now, seeing what we see, and I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill guy. I don't think he's going to have the same kind of magic that he had last year. But I think with him and Derrick Henry and a few of the weapons that they have, especially on defense, I mean, they're a tough team. They have Vrabel. That's a very well coached defensive team. Mike Vrabel has done. As
much as I want to, put over my fellow Walsh Jesuit High School graduate Mike Vrabel, I have to ask: are they overusing Derrick Henry though?
They are, but I mean, I think Derrick Henry has maybe one more solid year in him.
Yeah,
before he hits the wall.
Because, I mean, we've seen this before.
But teams are going to be focusing on him a lot more now. Obviously, they're going to basically stack the box just to try to stop him.
Exactly, because, they drafted Corey Davis 3 years ago out of Western Michigan.
And they let him go.
They declined the fifth-year option.
Well, I mean, basically, essentially, just he's kind of on his way out. I mean.
Exactly. And they don't really have any receiving threats,
But they didn't have any last year as well. They still kind of made it work somehow. I mean,
which is something that franchise has historically always done.
Right. But I could see them going 10-6. To be fair, I mean, like that's more.
I looked at their schedule. I saw 9-7.
Yeah, okay, 1 game difference. Like 10-6, 9-7, same thing.
Especially with Houston and Jacksonville in that
That's
division.
interesting. The Colts. I want to see everything materialize. I've become a big Phillip Rivers guy over the years. I just want to see him in a new system, in a new kind of area, and just kind of see how he forms and bonds with his teammates.
I want to see the him and Frank Reich combo work out. Frank Reich's done a great job in Indianapolis so far with a cavalcade of quarterbacks, a lot of question marks.
Right.
I want to see that work just because Phillip Rivers and Frank Reich are two easy guys to root for.
Okay, so you have the Colts, I have the Titans. How about the AFC Central?
You mean the North?
AFC North.
Yeah, the North, previously known as the AFC Central. Obviously, Baltimore's going to win that division. ESPN has them at 12-4, and I think that is even a little low. Just because the Ravens have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Lamar Jackson's the defending MVP. It's going to be interesting to see what the offseason work is going to look like for some of these teams evaluating the game tape. So
that's an interesting division, though. I mean, you have Big Ben coming back. He's going to be motivated. I've always been like I like the Steelers.
16 years
I like the Steelers. I like the Steelers because they always play hard. Tomlin coaches that team up. I could see them kind of being in the mix. I don't think they're going to win the division. Obviously, with the Ravens, everything would just.
I see them 7-9,
but. I could see them being a pest for like most of the teams, even a team like Cleveland. We'll see. And a new head coach, obviously they beefed up that O-line. They have Beckham. They still have Landry. We'll see the next step that Baker takes in his third year. I could see them kind of being in the mix as well. Again, not winning the division, but it's going to be a big fight.
Obviously, of course, I went through the Browns schedule. As you guys all know, I'm a big Browns fan, so I went through it with a fine-tooth comb. I have them 10-6 and making the playoffs as a wild card.
Oh,
I know that's ambitious, and I know, especially after last year, all aboard the Cleveland hype train. I know I should probably refrain from doing that again, but no, I have them 10-6 and making the playoffs. They got Baker, who I think will mature.
Would you put money on that?
Yes, I would.
Okay, how much?
Depending
on the odds or what?
It all depends on where the lines are.
All right, we'll get into that. How about the AFC West? AFC West, obviously, Kansas City. Is that fair?
I say the Chiefs are a safe bet to win that division.
I really think I was kind of on the fence.
Really? Were you?
No. Obviously, when you have the best player in football, Patrick Mahomes, and you have a Hall of Fame coach in Andy Reid, and you have Tyreek Hill,
my fellow Cincinnati Bearcat Travis Kelce. Anyway, the Chiefs do have kind of a tough schedule this year, but they have the most talent of anybody in the AFC West. The Broncos, they did just sign 2 wide receivers. They have Drew Lock coming up, but that's going to take a year to materialize. The Raiders, who knows what the fuck's going on there with their quarterback situation in Gruden. And the Chargers, who knows what the fuck's going to go on with their situation, because honestly, I think Justin Herbert's overrated. So the Chiefs, I think, take that division with ease. Whether or not they're going to be the 1 or 2 seed remains to be seen. The Chargers might be an outside shot for a wild card, but this division is just the biggest question mark of anybody I can think of.
Yeah, I think the Chargers could make a particular run. They probably have the most, well, not the most overall talent, but they have a lot of talent in a lot of specific positions. The Broncos, I think, will take a step up. Drew Lock showed me a little bit towards the end of the season. He could be that guy finally, the guy that Elway drafted, just be that next guy to, lead that team into the right direction. But yeah, obviously it's a Chiefs division. I mean, anybody who thinks otherwise is just ignorant.
Hasn't been watching football the last couple of years.
Exactly. So let's jump into the NFC.
Now, one note I want to make here, as I look at the number of primetime games by team, like we were talking about, the Rams, of course, got 5 games, but the Chargers only got 2. I'm sorry. I think the Chargers are probably the better team right now, even though they'll be sharing a stadium. What do you think of the NFC West?
Seattle, San Francisco, 49ers. That's going to be, I don't know. Those two teams are primarily the two teams of that specific division. The 49ers obviously coming off the Super Bowl hangover from, just 2 minutes from winning it all, or 2-3 minutes, whatever it was.
And they only lost Emmanuel Sanders and DeForest Buckner.
Right. And, Jimmy G still has to show me a little bit more. I feel like...
And they lost Matt Breida, too. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. And, again, I don't want to, peg them as the team to win. I like what Seattle's done. They always play each other tough, but it's definitely those two teams. The Rams, to me, are just going to be... they'll be lucky if they go 500.
Yeah, 500 would be a good year for the Rams, and watch out for Arizona.
And the Cardinals, and the Arizona Cardinals, to me, are up-and-coming team. Obviously, they added DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray is going to take that next step. We'll see.
They drafted Josh Jones out of Houston to be their tackle.
Yes. And, basically, we'll see how I can see them basically being above 5 wins, more or less. So, but it's going to come down to those two teams. 49ers, Seattle Seahawks. I think the Niners will take it. I think they go probably, 11-5.
Oh, no, I think the Niners go maybe... Actually, no, 11-5 sounds about right. Seahawks get a wild card.
Right. So how about the let's shift to the other side of the coast. How about the NFC East?
All the big media markets. Obviously, whoever wins this division is going to be the 4 seed, because this is one of the weakest divisions in football as it's constructed right now. Granted, a couple teams are situated well for the future. I think Philadelphia takes it just because of Carson Wentz, if he stays healthy.
I hate to almost say it. I think the Cowboys. I think they finally kind of grab hold of that division.
That offensive line's getting old, though.
Yeah, but especially with them drafting CeeDee Lamb, who I think he's going to make an immediate impact. With Amari Cooper on the next hand, yeah,
and Michael Gallup, that 1-2-3 combo. For the receivers in Dallas is something. And with Dak playing on the franchise tag, he's basically getting the Kirk Cousins treatment that he got in Washington. Dak's in a prove-it year.
Right. The thing about the Eagles that kind of worries me is, can Wentz stay healthy? Can he finally make it through a full season? I think, in a way, he kind of gets unfairly knocked. But then again, reality is he's never finished 16 games. Well, outside of his rookie year. I don't even know if he finished 16 games.
No, his rookie year he did.
Okay, so... can he say it always seems to be kind of these fluky injuries, at least over the last couple of years. But if he can stay healthy, I think they have a chance. I think Dallas is going to take the division. I think the Giants are going to hopefully take a step up with Joe Judge as their head coach.
And Daniel Jones going into year 2, which for you fantasy players, I think Daniel Jones has a big year this year.
The Redskins are going to be the Redskins. I think they win maybe 4 or 5 games.
Under
we'll see.
500 for sure.
We'll see what Dwayne,
under 500.
We'll see what Dwayne Haskins is. But I think it's the Cowboys' division to lose, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think I could see them winning. Let's see. A fair one would be maybe 10-6.
Ooh, I think that's a little too aggressive for them.
I think 10-6.
I think that's a little too aggressive for Dallas. I think Philadelphia takes down the NFC East because you have to think of something else. Even if Carson Wentz does go down, nobody has any NFL game tape on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, we'll see how they utilize him in that offense. Let's go to the NFC South. That's going to be an interesting one with Mr. Brady.
Yeah, Mr. Florida man.
in Tampa. And obviously you have the Saints there. You still have the Falcons. That'll be interesting. I think off the top of my head...
We'll start with Carolina. They're probably going 5-11.
But I just left them out completely because I don't think they're going to be any kind of challenge whatsoever. Off the top of my head, I'm gonna stick to my guns and stay with the Saints. I'm
with you on that.
I think that they still have enough weapons, obviously on offense. They still have the talent on defense. I love the Sean Payton Drew Brees connection. I'm hoping that they can at least eventually break through and go to another Super Bowl before Drew Brees retires.
Which will probably be after this year.
But I feel like, it's their division to lose. I think, let me see, what would be a fair record? Maybe 11-5.
I looked at their schedule. 14-2 is doable. I don't think they pull it off, but it's
11-5 is more or less what I'd go with. I think those two matchups against the Buccaneers will be a lot of fun to watch. I see the Bucs making the playoffs as well. I see them going 10-6.
Yeah, but have you looked at their schedule? Like the Buccaneers' first half of their schedule is Charmin toilet paper soft.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, it's just all this is speculation right now. I think 10-6 is more of a fair grade for the Bucs. Outside of that, the Falcons, I think. Maybe this is the year that they'll fire Dan Quinn sometime in midseason because I don't really see them doing anything outside of just maybe 8-8. Is that fair? Is that even fair, or maybe even below that?
8-8 would be a good year for Atlanta.
8-8, and
especially with Matt Ryan in year 13. He's not getting any younger. Julio Jones, he's starting to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Julio's going to be, I think, 32 this year. So, I mean...
He was drafted in 2011, so...
Yeah, more or less. I mean, we're not going to get, like, specifically, but he's, like, in his 30s. He's on the wrong side of 30. So, I don't really think... And Carolina, as I mentioned, look, new coach, new, GMs, new everything. So it's gonna be a transition for them.
And if Robbie Anderson is a well hyped free agent signing, that's when you know your franchise is in trouble.
Yeah, and I'm a big Teddy Bridgewater guy. I think he's kind of like a hybrid Alex Smith, more or less. Kind of a guy. Then they got Christian McCaffrey, solid player. I mean, but they're obviously transitioning. Rule's gonna try to put his culture into the organization, try to just, I could see them winning about maybe
5 games.
4 or 5 games. Yeah, 4 or 5 games. And then last but not least, we have the NFC North.
Yeah, the one of the more interesting divisions in football. Let's just start by saying, I'm sorry, I think Chicago might be like 4-12 this year. They declined a 5th-year option on Mitch Trubisky.
Shocker of all shockers.
Yeah, exactly. They did sign Nick Foles in the offseason, which, he's not good at being the guy, but he's good at being the guy behind the guy. And what offensive weapons do they have? They lost Trey Burton as a tight end.
Pretty much that. Yeah, I see the Bears winning perhaps maybe 4 or 5 games if lucky. The team that I see owning that division is the Packers again.
Really?
I don't think they'll go 13-3.
You think the Packers take that division down?
I think the Packers take that division.
I think the Vikings take it.
I think anytime the best player in that division is still Aaron Rodgers.
I'll give you that.
Okay, all right. I like a lot of what I saw last year as far as what they were able to do. I think Rodgers is going to be motivated coming back into this particular season, knowing that, he was on the cusp. Not to say that they were really ever in the game. I mean, the 49ers just basically wiped them out.
But what did they do in the draft to help them out, though?
I still think the skill position players that they have right now, they can still win with. I don't like the Vikings more or less. I feel like their defense is getting a little bit older, as we,
and they did cut Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah. And Kirk Cousins, again, is a good player. He'll get the job done for the most part. But he's not a star. I think at the end, the best player is always going to take over. If gun to my head, I would take the Packers to run away. Not run away, but, win the division. I can see the Vikings winning double digit. But I think the Vikings.
Another reason I'm going to take the Vikings. The Vikings is because, let's face it, Kirk Cousins, he's basically a rich man's Andy Dalton. Guy who always shows up in the games no one's watching. They still have Adam Thielen. They drafted Justin Jefferson, which, given the way Vikings receivers are, there's a large scale between Laquan Treadwell and Randy Moss. You still have Dalvin Cook in that backfield. Pat Elflein is still on the offensive line. Kyle Rudolph is still their tight end. I still like that offense to produce. Another hit on the Packers is they lost Brian Bulaga in the offseason. So I just think the Vikings have a more complete team to win a division right now, but not enough to win multiple playoff games. I think the ceiling is very low for the NFC North as a whole. And notice throughout this entire couple of minutes we've been talking about the NFC North, we don't even mention Detroit.
Yeah, Matt Patricia is on his way out.
He's done after this year.
That's pretty much.
He's done after this year.
Pretty much set in stone. As far as Super Bowl matchups, I can easily see the Saints versus the Ravens in Tampa, Florida, next 2021. I think that's the matchup. I think if I had to, the reason why I see it, look, you're always going to go with like the best talent. Lamar Jackson, well, outside of Patrick Mahomes, but the way that the way that team is built, and especially how they've upgraded in the draft, I see Lamar taking that next step. I see them dethroning the Kansas City Chiefs to make that next, to take that run at the Super Bowl. And the Saints have been knocking on the door for like the last 3 years or so. I think, they're going to have a bit of luck on their side. Not luck, but, like they're not going to be as cursed as they've been because they've had some of the most horrendous things happen to them.
I was just going to say, Minneapolis Miracle and Nickel will be calling anybody.
Exactly. So I see them breaking through and Breeze maybe getting that last opportunity to, win another Super Bowl ring. So I see them as a matchup. What's your matchups?
I agree with you on the Ravens from the AFC because here's something else that we haven't really gone into yet. With the way the schedules work and the way we think the records are going to be, or at least the way I think the records are going to be, I think the Ravens are going to be the 1 seed, which means a Kansas City-Baltimore AFC Championship game will be in Baltimore in January. Mahomes is not going to be able to do as well in Baltimore in January as he would be, say, in Kansas City, which can still be cold, but it might help his game a little bit more.
We'll have to see. Obviously, how everything plays out. Health is always going to be like a determining factor.
And in terms of the NFC, and I'm not just saying this because we have some listeners that are big San Francisco 49ers fans, but I think the Niners go back.
Really?
Yeah. I think we have a rematch of Super Bowl 47 and Super Bowl 55 in Tampa. I don't think we have a lighting issue this time like we did in New Orleans back in 2013. I've got Ravens versus 49ers.
I can see that. I mean, I think though even losing Buckner or whatever it is, trading him away. They actually, who's the kid that they drafted out of South Carolina? Plays the same position, defensive tackle. Anyway, I could see that happening. I just think in the end, Jim Garoppolo has to show a little bit more. I have to see that he can be that franchise quarterback that they paid and they traded for. He hasn't really shown me much. He didn't show me much last year. He's not a horrible guy, but
Javon Kinlaw.
There you go. So he should be able to fill Buckner's position. Fairly well. Obviously not to the level Buckner did, but they filled the need for that. But Garoppolo's got to show me a little bit more. Obviously, they lost Emmanuel Sanders, so they lost another weapon.
But they re-signed Eric Armstead.
Right. But
Joey Bosa's still there. And again, offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships.
Basically, if Garoppolo can evolve, and it's weird to say that because we've only seen like tidbits of what he is. A lot of times he looks really good. At third down conversions last year, he was actually one of the better quarterbacks. But I don't.
He's got Kittle helping him out there.
Yeah. But there was something very glaring. The fact that he only threw 8 or 9 passes in the NFC Championship game, and even though they ran the ball like crazy on a Packers team that they knew they were better than. But what does that say, Kyle Shanahan? Your franchise guy, a guy you're paying $25+ million to, only 8 or 9 passes that he threw that game. I'm just it's kind of a glaring weakness. I don't know. I'm not convinced Kyle Shanahan completely trusts Garoppolo.
Well, as the great Herm Edwards once said, you play to win the game.
Yeah, with that said, we'll see. So you got Niners, Ravens. I got Saints, Ravens. So.
Yeah, but it's an interesting side note. SportsCenter earlier this week, if you guys didn't see this, of course, this week was the 18th anniversary of Allen Iverson's practice rant that he did in that press conference, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah, I did see something about that.
Yeah, so SportsCenter's top 10 was the top 10 press conferences of all time, and You Play to Win the Game was number 3. Jim Morris Playoffs was on there. Denny Green's They Are Who We Thought They Were was there. Obviously, Playoffs was there. Just some of the iconic press conferences SportsCenter gave us this week as great content. So thank you to the people at ESPN.
Yeah, that was it's hard to believe. I remember where I was, not to get off topic, but I remember where I was when I saw that AI press conference. I was actually in college. I'd come home, and then this was I believe the 76ers were playing in the Celtics, if I'm not mistaken. The Celtics went on to beat them.
Yeah, it was the 0-2 playoffs.
Them. Yeah, and AI got suspended for, I think it was game 4, and then he went on that rant. I remember just being on like my PC at the time. Yeah, I didn't have a laptop, and then just looking at this conference, and I was just like, wow. And believe it or not, I actually agreed with Allen until that last tidbit of him like, how the hell me practicing gonna make my teammates better? I'm like, Allen, I was with you until you said that last part. So I'm sorry, bro. I was there with you, but that's a fun little thing. It's funny. It's like 18 years ago. Holy Christ, where does time go? But with that said, we have some. What I think we touched a little bit on it. Surprise teams. What teams? I think I kind of threw one out in the Dolphins. What's a surprise team for you?
Well, again, I threw this out earlier. I think this is the year the Browns finally break through. Again, not to
Would that be a surprise, though? Because, I mean, the Browns, look, they have a shitload of talent. People know that. So what's it like, a team that, like, out of the dark? Like, to me, like the Dolphins, it just makes sense because even though they're still in a rebuilding kind of mode, it's more or less like you don't really expect them to, like, be above 500 or close to 500.
Well, you could say the Bills, but I think they're the favorite in that division.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Bills, I don't know. I mean, the Browns, you really feel like I know, look, they didn't live up to their expectations last year, but
they're also because they didn't have an offensive line.
Exactly. They're a team to me that, I mean, they should be better. I mean, they should have been at least 8-8 or above that.
Well, that's what happens when you hire a running backs coach as your head coach, having no head coaching experience at any level prior to that.
Yeah. So the Browns is your team?
Well, obviously, I'm going to say that I'm a Cleveland native. The Browns are my team. Of course, I'm going to say they're going to be better this year because this is the one time of year Browns fans have anything resembling hope. Then Week 1 happens, and then it's like, pew, blank, blank.
What about teams that you think won't live up to their expectations?
Ooh, this is interesting. I saw on ESPN here when we were doing a research for the episode, their Houston Texans writer thinks they're going to go 9-7. I think that is absolutely laughable. Like, I think Houston might be a 4 or 5 win team at best.
That's an interesting one. I could see that happening. I mean,
and they've done it before. If you remember, in 2011 and 2012, they won the AFC South. They hosted the Saturday 4:30 game like they do every year in the playoffs. And then in 2013, the last year under Gary Kubiak, they went 2-14 and ended up, with the number 1 pick, which they used to select Jadeveon Clowney.
Bill O'Brien does a hell of a job coaching the team up.
Bill O'Brien, the GM?
But Bill O'Brien, the GM, is a complete polar opposite of that. A team that I think will underachieve, probably the Titans. I think, and we kind of like talked about it earlier, like they don't specifically play in a strong division. But I think there's a lot of people, just from the AFC Championship appearance last year, think like, oh, this is a team that's going to... And I'm like, I think they're going to... I don't think they'll quite live up to that expectation. I think they're like kind of like they'll win a division, but like kind of like the way the Packers won the division last year. They were 13-3, but nobody really thought...
a 10-16.
Exactly. But I don't know even if that's fair to say if they're a team that... A lot of people are predicting to go far. I don't want to say Tampa because I think Tampa will have a good year. I think they'll live up to the expectations of what people think they'll
And they have a very soft schedule.
Exactly. So it's kind of hard to pick one that won't live up.
To your point on the Titans, for about a 7-week stretch in the second half of last year, Derrick Henry was the best running back in the NFL.
He's arguably one of the best players. Probably. Well, I mean,
he might have been one of the best players in the NFL. But
him and Lamar Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, he was undoubtedly the best running back in the NFL. And this is in an era where we have Christian McCaffrey, who was the entire Panthers offense.
Right.
Another team I think is really going to underachieve, even though I think a lot of people are kind of saying this is going to be the case, the LA Rams. They're going into the new stadium now, the SoFi Stadium that's going to be in Inglewood, about 20 minutes south of where we record this. Sean McVay's still there. He was the whisperer a couple of years ago. Like, if you remember the coaching carousel after the 2018 season, if somebody had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, they got a head coaching job. But
I mean, I think the Rams, I think people expect them to be what they're going to be. I mean, obviously, I don't want to say they were exposed, but I mean, for a team that I think they went 500 last season, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. They missed. I think they missed the playoffs last year.
But yeah, with obviously Gurley being released and
Jared Goff being signed to with a handcuff contract.
Yeah, and that's an albatross of a contract. I mean,
and they don't have first round picks for a little while because they traded one away for Jalen Ramsey.
Pretty much, and yeah, and I mean, I think it's to be expected. I think it's a 6-win team. I would say, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think the Niners
really
might actually be a team that,
like I said, I got them going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but what I mean, I don't mean, like, when I say won't live up to expectations, I don't see them being a kind of a clear-cut favorite. Like, clear-cut, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle won the division.
Okay, I wouldn't be surprised to see that because that team is very well built. John Schneider's a great GM.
Essentially, pretty much, I think I think there's something to be said about the Super Bowl hangover. We've seen that, like,
we saw with Carolina.
We saw that affect teams in the past.
50,
I mean, the Falcons back in 2016. I think the clear definition of that would be the 49ers. And, that would be the team, probably, I would say. Them and the Titans won't live up to that expectations of.
And one other thing I will say is that the NFC South does have easy schedules this year, so the Saints might be able to take that number 1 seed. Again, that NFC Championship game might come down to whoever's hosting it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, I just think the 49ers are a more complete team defensively, so that they'll beat New Orleans in the NFC Championship game. But again, we're making this prediction here on May 9th, 8 months before this is all supposed to go down. So, again, this is fodder for freezing cold takes.
Yeah, I also saw like some of the Thursday night games that we have lined up are actually some pretty good ones. Thursday
night schedule is actually pretty decent.
It's always been a dog shit kind of like, I mean, I still watch it, but, it's like, some horrible matchups. But they kind of stepped their game up.
Now, granted, there are some good ones and there are some dog shit ones.
Well, there's always going to be.
Yeah, like week 3, Dolphins, Jaguars, fuck that.
Honestly, I'm just starting to get to the point where I'm kind of good without the Thursday night games. I don't know why. Like when you remember when back in the day when NFL Network only for Thanksgiving going forward they would play like the 2 games there, and then they would kind of write it out to the end of the season, and then they just put the 12 games. The Thursday night games there, and I'm like, okay, but. I don't know. I'm not a big proponent of that anymore. I'm just kind of like, all right, we could do without Thursday night games.
So obviously, the Cowboys and the Lions have played Thanksgiving games since, the 30s and the 60s respectively. They've been doing that forever.
Right. And then, there's staples of that.
And then back in the early 90s, ESPN used to move a couple of Sunday night games to Thursday because they didn't want to compete with the World Series. So, like, I remember a game in 1994 where the Browns won in Houston, that being on a Thursday night. And then, like you said, they kind of came up with that half-season sort of deal in the late 2010s. And then by 2012, they did the whole, let's go ahead and conquer a night of sports programming and fuck college football in the process.
Right. I mean, it's just like, if there's no desirable matchups, and obviously, like, look, they stepped it up a little bit this upcoming season. But
yeah, exactly. Like Cowboys, Ravens, that'll be a good one. Cardinals, Seahawks in week 11, I'm watching that. Packers, 49ers in week 9, yes. Chiefs, Bills in week 6, holy shit, that's going to be a good game.
But, I don't know. I'm kind of good with the Sunday games and the Monday night game. I mean, that's kind of where I stand at this point because, I don't know. It takes away a little bit of something.
Yeah, but
I kind of like that anticipation of college football on Saturday, NFL on Sunday, and then you have your closer, you have your chaser at the end on Monday night.
Yeah, but it was kind of interesting is that as better as the Thursday night schedule got, the Sunday night schedule has, it's not as good as it's been in recent years. I mean, it's been the number 1 show in primetime since the 2012, television season, but a lot of their matchups are questionable at best.
Yeah, I mean.
They have Bears, Packers in week 12. The Bears might be 1-10 by that point. Chiefs, Raiders in Vegas. I'm like, yeah, I know there's the allure there with the new Vegas Stadium and John Gruden, but The Raiders might not be any good. We don't even know what their quarterback situation is. Ravens, Patriots the week before that in week 10. The Patriots with Jarrett Stidham, that's a huge question mark.
Look, I don't know. I didn't actually get a chance to look at the Sunday night games. Sunday night games are usually pretty entertaining, though. So we'll see. I just kind of thought that was interesting. Some Thursday night matchups are pretty good. I was kind of like fairly surprised. But, let's talk about this. How about Andy Dalton to the Cowboys?
Yeah, if we're going to talk about, nationally televised teams, of course, no team is televised more than the Cowboys. As we mentioned earlier, they have 6 primetime games this year, and if they have a decent season, they might get flexed into 1 or 2 more. But Andy Dalton is going there knowing he's going to be the backup to Dak Prescott. If Dak gets injured, he can step in. He can kind of be what, John Kitna was to Tony Romo that 1 year. But, yeah, I think it's going to bring a lot of good veteran leadership to a locker room that needs it.
Yeah, that signing, it kind of made me think of like, okay, so what does that do to Dak? It's a prove-it year, obviously.
He's on the franchise contract, much as Kirk Cousins was in Washington.
Yeah, it's a prove-it year for Dak, and it's kind of one of those things where I feel like, wow, like it's. I mean, you have a proven winner, and then by winner, I don't mean like a Super Bowl champion or anything like that, but a guy who's led his team to the playoffs multiple times in Andy Dalton, a proven, a professional, and the fact that he's bringing him as a backup, I wonder if that's going to put a lot of pressure on Dak, who's always shown to be very professional and can block out a lot of things and whatnot. But I picked the Cowboys to win the division, but if they struggle, let's say mid-season, and they're somewhere within the pack, do they do a flip-flop and, Dalton, or is he just going to be a backup?
No, I think Jerry Jones rides out Dak Prescott throughout the season, no matter how bad it goes, unless Dak gets hurt.
I can see that, but I just thought that was an interesting sign. Especially when Dalton could have gone different places. And we don't know if New England wanted him or if any particular teams wanted him.
I was just going to say he could have fought for the starting job in New England or even in Chicago before they signed Nick Foles.
And I know he has a home in the Dallas area or the Texas area. I believe it's the Dallas area, but
yeah, he went to TCU, which is in Fort Worth, which is only about 10 miles west of where the stadium is.
Right. Okay. And I believe that he has that. And it's one of those things where I don't know. I'm interested to see how that goes, how that plays out. Obviously, Dak is in the contract year. It's a prove-it year. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Here's another name, Cam Newton.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't think we've seen the last of him. And we talked about him before on the show. We talked about the free agency when we did our second episode. Injuries are a reality of life in the NFL. We see like 1 or 2 every year in training camp. We see a major guy who we think is going to be an impact player for a franchise, go down in sudden and unexpected circumstances. And I think we're going to see that with at least one quarterback this year. And then that's when I think Cam Newton might get that call.
Yeah, that's to be expected. I don't think he really fits in too many locker rooms. Obviously, with his diva persona, kind of like, I think Cam actually cares more about how he looks and how he dresses more so than actually being a football player. We don't know his health. His health
is the guy who spends more time with his stylist than he does with his receivers.
Right. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like I don't really kind of feel like outside of somebody, and especially not just somebody, but a starting quarterback getting injured in preseason, in training camp or whatnot, how Cam is going to fit into any particular team, because even his own head coach, his former head coach, who he went to a Super Bowl with in Ron Rivera, didn't even took the backup, Kyle Allen, with him to Washington Redskins. So that probably tells me a little bit more of where they think he's at physically. Not like, and I'm not saying Ron Rivera dislikes Cam and whatnot, but that tells me more where he knows maybe Cam is damaged goods from now on.
And you have to think of something else. He's only a 9-year veteran. He's the same age as, Andy Dalton and, A.J. Green and Julio Jones and Von Miller and all those guys. But he's got an old 9 years on him. He has been beaten up.
Yeah. And, guys like that who he never really perfected his passing game. Cam throws a nice little deep ball, whatnot, but the intermediate short passing game, he's never really mastered that, and it's going to be like, especially when he doesn't have that mobility anymore, just to rely on that. Whereas somebody like Jameis Winston, who I like, because Jameis's mistakes more or less comes from bad decisions, bad reads that he does. It's not like he can't get guys the ball. He just, just makes poor decisions in that aspect, where Cam doesn't necessarily put the ball away. He big arm, but classic big arm, but no touch.
Yeah, but
we've seen those kind of guys before.
Well, first off, for Jameis, I mean, could you think of a better landing spot for him than learning behind Drew Brees?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the places I wanted him to go, either the Steelers or the Saints.
I still think the Seahawks would have been the best fit for him under Russell Wilson. But also for Cam, though, and not to put everything on him, but the Panthers, probably more so than any other franchise except for the Bears or the Ravens, have completely devalued the wide receiver position. So part of that is on the front office for not giving him weapons to throw to. Yes, he had Greg Olsen for a number of years. I think Steve Smith was still there like the first year he was there in Carolina.
He was there for the first two. Steve Smith was there till 2013, so 11, 12, 13. So he's there for 3 years.
Yeah, so... Yeah, the front office didn't really give him the weapons to throw to, so that's not completely on Cam. But I think, as we talked about in the free agency pod that we did several weeks ago, Jameis probably still has a lot of rope left. With Cam, we've seen the peak.
Pretty much. And look, even if we, from a performance standpoint, his value is not what it is. He's not the passer. It's the health standpoint that I think is stopping him, from being signed from a team. We don't know what his arm is like. We don't know what his. I think he had leg issues. Didn't he have I know it's primarily his arm that the teams are worried about. So, and basically when you factor in everything else as far as his personality and his
contract demands.
In the locker room, is it going to mesh with anybody? Is it going to mesh with a certain organization? So outside of a team in dire need of a quarterback. So we've pretty much seen all the positions. How about this? Mike Glennon back up to Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville. I thought that was pretty interesting. Mike Glennon, a career kind of journeyman guy. Actually, if you ever take a look at Mike Glennon, I heard somebody actually say it, he's like a human giraffe. Hey, my man's neck is just so stout. It just stands out.
You remember when we were talking on the pod about quarterbacks and their height issues?
Yes.
You don't want to go any higher than 6'5"?
Exactly.
He is the quintessential example of this.
Yeah, 6'7" guy, but he's back in, which I guess goes to our point. You see these positions being filled. I mean, what options does that leave Cam? I mean, I don't really see him going.
Well, going back to Glennon for a second. Late in the year, the Jaguars take on the Bears in a late season game, so it's going to be Glennon as a backup versus his old team where he was as a backup. I think that game could be for the number 1 overall pick.
I can see that happening.
Yeah,
the Trevor Lawrence draft. I mean, I heard Mel Kiper actually mention that Justin Fields could be in competition with Lawrence, and I'm like, no, that's not.
No, okay.
Happen.
First off, yes, he will be in competition with Lawrence.
No,
don't trash my Buckeye like that, dude.
It's not going to be anywhere close.
OH baby.
Everybody's going to be tanking for Trevor Lawrence.
No, we said the same thing about Tua last year, and what happens? Athens, Ohio's Joey Burrow goes down to LSU and has the greatest season by a quarterback in college, maybe in our lifetime.
But here's the question: if Tua doesn't get hurt, does Burrow still go number 1?
Yes.
Well, look, that's speculation. We don't know. We don't know. But
baby, I know. I think Fields could pass Trevor Lawrence. And let's face it, this time last year we were all saying Tua, and we didn't know anything.
We can agree on this. They'll more than likely both guys will go 1 and 2 next year, as far as Lawrence and Fields. So
I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see that.
So, but anyway, that's the basically.
Yeah, that's
NFL schedule.
Yeah, that's our May 9th, 2020 prediction of what we think the NFL 2020 season, again, assuming it goes off as planned, is going to be. I hope that midway through this NFL season, we can do a recap pod somewhere halfway through and see how much of idiots we sound like. But if you guys at home want to tell us we sound like idiots, or if you like what we're doing, feel free to email us at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. That's REGGIE, the letter N. Regis, Regis Podcast at gmail.com. We are also on Twitter at Reggie N Regis Pod, and we are available on a bunch of streaming platforms as well.
Yeah, 7 to be specific. We are on Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public. We are also on YouTube. So feel free to take a listen to us. Tell us what you think. Obviously, as my compadre over here gave you the email address, Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. Feel free to just let us know. And with that being said as well, hope everybody out there is staying healthy, staying sane in this unprecedented time. Just like, we'll ride it out. Hopefully we'll have sports. We have UFC tonight, so, it's something. And we'll see what happens going forward. You have final thoughts?
Yeah, if you guys have any ideas on topics we can cover in the coming weeks, again, feel free to let us know. But until then, we will see you guys next week.
And we're out.